You're live.
And welcome, folks. This is House Corrections and Institutions Committee. This is, it's today, Tuesday, April.
Yeah.
And this is our first meeting of the week, and we're here with, Kim McManus from the Department of Sheriffs and State's Attorneys or State's Attorneys and Sheriffs to go over with us in terms of any feedback they're willing to give us on the victim notification task force report, and how it impacts you folks, or if there's any impact at all, or what you would recommend. So Kim, welcome. You could just identify yourself for the record.
Thank you. Yes, for the record, Kim McManus, Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs, and thank you for your flexibility. I know you had everyone in last week and I was not able to be here. The nice part is Jen Pullman laid out the update for you all. We are in full support of the recommendations that are provided, so this is very short, probably our testimony today. I think the critical piece for our victim advocates and for our office is any chance we're able to give power back to victims, we want to do that. So all of these pieces about clarifying the legislation so that victims can opt out if they wish to, we think that is a benefit to them. Our victim advocates are still going to explain the benefits, right, of knowing everything that we hope they know and work on safety planning as needed. But just being able to update our laws to reflect that we don't want to be treating victims as children. We don't want to be assuming what they need. Every victim is going to be different. And so legislation that reflects that and gives them some power back, we think is important, and we support that.
So you're party to the MOU.
Yes.
Have you signed, has the Department of State's Attorney and Sheriff signed off on it yet, or is this still waiting?
So we haven't signed it because it's not finalized, and it's not finalized because yours truly hasn't finished it yet. Which I have to tell you, like this morning, I was having like a flashback to fourth grade when I was like, I don't have my homework done. Hope they don't ask about the MOU. Truly. So we're on track. It will be completed. Truly, there's just a few pieces left. And then just a clarification on whether the Attorney General wishes to sign it as well. But all the parties right now that are listed in the draft that you have are in agreement with the draft we have and with the changes that are coming. They have all suggested those changes. So we're feeling very confident on everyone signing it.
So what is listed is the network has been crossed out. Did they not agree, or were they not party to the discussions?
So that was a conversation with the network, and the network agreed that they did not need to be in this MOU because the MOU is running through the statutory obligations for communications with victims, and the network doesn't have any statutory obligations. So we kept referring to everyone except for, like, the network is not mentioned anywhere in the document. And so we realized it didn't make sense to have them as a signatory. And so we had a conversation and they said, absolutely, like, remove us. That's fine. Just didn't make sense.
And then why is the HA's office highlighted? Is it because they haven't agreed to it?
We've sent the draft to them and asked if they would like to sign on. They have signaled interest in it, but we just don't know for sure. And if they do sign on, then there would be additional editing, because right now we refer to State's Attorney's Office, State's Attorney's Victim Advocates, and we would need to change that to prosecutor so that we fit in the Attorney General's criminal division. So there'd just be some language changes once we know their position.
And the others, DOC, State Police, and Vermont Center for Crime Victim Services have all agreed, but no one has really signed the MOU yet. It's still being.
Because it's still in draft form, yes. So once it's finalized, everyone will want to do one more read, run it through their general counsel if they have general counsel, and then sign it.
So what the recommends that the task force has put out, how is that gonna change the any processes or any practices that are currently within the state's attorney's offices across the state? Within the different state's attorney's offices, is there gonna be a change in terms of how the process works? Is it gonna be clearer? Is it gonna be more streamlined? What changes, if any?
As far as the proposals, I think it's going to change things that our victim advocates have been advocating to change. So not really changing our day-to-day, but just changing how they would frame the information and explain it to a victim, as far as especially do you wish to opt out of any of this information? And then on our end, just making sure we have our processes in place to note that, because of course, the worst thing to do is to tell someone you can opt out, hear them, and then not remember. So that would just be, but that's something our victim advocates would be ready. So there's really no major impact on us other than updated education of any law changes, so that our victim advocates are explaining it correctly to the victims.
And I know one of the, I don't want to say issues, but one of the log jams seemed to be that there wasn't much communication sometimes between the prosecution and DOC when the person ended up being in the incarcerative setting. Do you see that log jam clearing up a little bit with the work that's occurred here?
We think it's improving. The particular logjam is the one that was noted about when somebody's held after hours or on the weekends and then released before our office. We're involved maybe in that hold, but we don't have a victim advocate looped in yet. And so somebody being released before that arraignment on Monday or the next business day, that's been the place.
Person's only been charged.
Correct. Right. So that's where they've been arrested. They might be held, so they're detained by DOC. So DOC statutorily needs to convey information to the victim, but they haven't had the victim's information. And so I do think that's one of the big steps forward that this has done. And that is the Vermont State Police creating the form, the confidential victim information. And then once that's done, us educating law enforcement, municipalities, but also our and the sheriffs, that you can do this, you can provide the victim information. Here's why it's important, because we don't get looped in until arraignment. And then, so I do think that that's one of the most critical pieces that this has moved forward.
And that information from the local law enforcement, when they bring the person to the facility, that information about the victim will be transpired from the local law enforcement, whatever that may be, to staff in the booking room.
Mhm.
And you hope that staff in the DOC booking room gets to the appropriate folks for buying.
That is yes, and I'm like,
That's
that, I think the operational piece that's still being worked out. Because again, it might be that the victim wants to be notified if they're released, but they haven't had enough time or education, right, about the whole Vines system. In that very small, the law enforcement has a very limited window to share a lot of information. But that is that process of DOC of where that information goes, at least in that short window, is if released, they have the contact information for the victim. Who's contacting the victim, whether it's Vines or whether it's a human, that's a question for DOC. But it's also one that could have been discussed at one of these meetings, and I just don't recall this right at this moment. And I can check on that.
So I can see that for
And I know that's been discussed, like the actual operational piece, and that's what we're trying to sew up there.
I have a curiosity question, I guess. I know we've had to ask this and covered this before, but what percentage or roughly number of people opt out of being notified?
Would not be able to say a number. When I was a prosecutor, my docket was domestic violence, sexual assault, and there were some who just didn't want to hear anything,
Mhm.
and that was protective.
Yeah.
It'd be hard for me to say a number. And then there are others who wanted to know absolutely everything,
Yeah.
and that was protective. So, but I'm not sure. I could canvass some folks to try and get a
I'm just
number.
curious, yeah, it was less than half, or less than a third or more, but I was just curious.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It's not gonna change anything, I just was curious.
And then Kim?
And not to add one more thing onto your plate, it's already a full plate.
That's okay. I clearly am not getting my homework done
I had
already.
wanted to have the intent, and we may put intent language in, to keep the group kind of, maybe not meeting as regular, but meeting or keeping together so that we don't lose sight of what we're doing, or if there's little tweaks that need to be done. Would you be in favor of that? For the group to kind of continue, or a representative from your group or whomever's to keep this ball rolling?
I think one of the best things that came out of this group is that this group has seen the benefit of regularly
Right,
checking in.
right.
And my understanding is they are going to keep meeting
Well,
monthly.
they kind of had not quite said that. That was why it was kind of like, well, we did it, but I said, but you want to keep the momentum going, or keeping it what you pass, which is discuss. And I asked for the language of intent for those meetings, no matter how that looks to keep going.
We're happy to be part of these meetings, whether it's legislated or we just do it on our own. But we would not be opposed if you put something like that in.
Yeah, we're just thinking. Intent to all the parties and say, our intention is that you would continue meeting as you see fit or on a voluntary basis or something to that. But it's not something that we're gonna put in a resolution or statute in session law like we did.
Mhm.
An intent that this really worked and let's keep it going. Kevin?
I was under the impression that this form actually is new to the process, that the arresting officer will fill this out and somehow get it to the parties that need to know. It sounds like, to me, like this is a draft because DOC still needs to approve it.
My understanding is that that is the form that's been created.
Yeah,
And it just hasn't been pushed out.
right,
And we're in the stage of getting everybody on board
right.
to adopt this form. And then by BOC, what is done with the form.
Right.
But that is the draft of it.
Because it seemed like from previous testimony, part of the problem is the initial information just wasn't getting to the victim advocate group. It wasn't provided, it wasn't input to the system, it wasn't available, et cetera, et cetera. And so this is pretty critical link, and yet it's pretty archaic also.
Well, sometimes the simplest
Yeah,
solution is the best one.
it's better than nothing, but I was hoping that maybe there was some thought as to how we could even improve the data entry somehow so that it really is available on a short weekend. I mean, if it's a piece of paper, somebody may not even see it for 2 days, right?
Well, and that's the piece of where that information is entered on the DOC side.
Right.
And I think that is one of the loops that's getting figured out. So DOC has that form
Yep.
and is reviewing it.
Yep.
And I believe that's the next step is just
Yep.
verifying where does that information go?
Yep.
Who knows it? so that who can respond.
So we have a C chart up here. So you can look at this. So where you see Alice, that's me. So then.
Oh, I never realized that.
Yeah, it's.
They want good.
That's really funny.
Advice like that.
It's funny. It's smart.
So I think the concern was, here we are with the paper copy, can some of this be done? I was concerned, it could be done electronically, not a paper.
Fine.
So what's the intent? Is it to be a paper copy or is this to do both or, you know?
I will check with the group. I believe the intent is the paper copy because that actually, with our various data entry, like when our law enforcement enters something in the Valcor system, DOC doesn't have that system. Like our data systems don't share in that way.
And
And
they probably shouldn't because
there's lots of reasons, exactly. So as much as this seems, I mean, it is analog. But this way officers, along with the other information that they would be giving out to victims, which is on paper, they have this form, they're able to take the information out. When they're lodging the person, they bring that form. We just don't have the infrastructure for that information sharing that I bet you're thinking of.
Does the victim have a say on whether or not this gets submitted?
I believe so. I think that's one of the pieces, again, that they would, do you want to know if this person's released prior to? And then they would, and again, it's confidential information.
Keeping an eye on the time. Anything else, Kim, that you want to share with us? You dare?
Only, yeah, no, only to say this has been a very beneficial group. I think you've heard that repeatedly. The temperature in the room, so to speak, at each of these meetings just gets better and better. So we big picture appreciate that you pushed to have this happen. I think it's been very beneficial.
Right.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Be following you downstairs for your walkthrough.
For YouTube, we're off right now. We're gonna go downstairs for a joint meeting of House Judiciary Committee on this 193. So if you want to follow along, I would assume the YouTube is accessible through House Judiciary.